Why does conflict seem to eternally grip the Middle East? Why the persistent clashes between Jews and Arabs, and even among Muslim nations themselves? The astonishing answer, it turns out, is deeply rooted in the story of two ancient biblical figures, Isaac and Ishmael. These were two brothers, sons of the patriarch Abraham. Isaac would become the revered ancestor of the Jewish people, while Ishmael would father the Arab and Muslim nations. Millennia ago, these two siblings endured a conflict uncannily similar to the one we witness today between Israel and the wider Muslim world. But the Bible doesn't just unveil the origins of this profound tension. It also, remarkably, reveals its ultimate resolution. We're about to explore the singular biblical moment when these two estranged brothers find reconciliation, a scene that scholars believe offers a perfect prophetic blueprint for how this modern-day struggle will finally conclude. Do you know how this extraordinary story ends? The key to unlocking this mystery lies in a profound ancient Jewish principle known as Mar Iotaman Leonim, which teaches that the deeds of the fathers are prophetic signs for their children. In essence, the lives lived by these patriarchs aren't just bygone historical events. They are divinely ordained foreshadowings, prophetically mirroring the destinies of their descendants. Fascinatingly, a parallel concept exists within Christianity called typology, a method the Apostle Paul himself employed to illuminate future events through the narratives of the Old Testament. When scholars meticulously apply these two analytical lenses to understand Israel's enduring conflict with Muslim nations, the insights they uncover are truly astonishing. And here's precisely why this understanding is so critically important. Through this extraordinary lens, the symbolism becomes incredibly clear. Isaac, alongside his mother Sarah, embodies the people of Israel. Conversely, according to deeply held Muslim tradition, Ishmael and his mother Hagar represent the Muslim nations. Once viewed through this specific interpretative framework, every piece of the puzzle begins to fall perfectly and undeniably into place. The genesis of this profound narrative, and the seeds of the conflict, began with a monumental promise from God himself. Abraham, the chosen patriarch, received a divine blessing for his descendants. "I will make you into a great nation, and all peoples on earth will be blessed through you." Yet, a formidable obstacle stood in the way of this grand prophecy. His beloved wife, Sarai, was barren. She simply could not conceive. In an era where a woman's value was inextricably linked to her ability to bear children, Sarai's infertility was an agonizing, enduring source of shame. Although God would later rename her Sarah, meaning princess, the irony of the title must have felt like a cruel jest to her. How could she possibly be a princess? She must have despaired, when she couldn't even provide Abraham with an heir. As the years relentlessly rolled by and Abraham and Sarai aged, God's magnificent promise of a child seemed to slip further and further into the realm of the utterly impossible. Overcome by an unbearable weight of despair, Sarah finally reached her breaking point. It was she who, in a desperate attempt to fulfill God's promise and assuage her own shame, proposed a solution to Abraham, a solution deeply rooted in the customs and legal practices of their ancient world. "The Lord has kept me from having children," she told him. "Go sleep with my slave instead." With a heavy heart, she presented him with her Egyptian servant Hagar, so that Abraham might at last have a child through her. This was no act of malicious intent, but one born purely of profound desperation. Yet this seemingly pragmatic solution swiftly birthed a new torrent of anguish. Sarah, now consumed by feelings of inferiority and jealousy, began to treat Hagar with escalating cruelty. Pregnant and utterly humiliated, Hagar saw only one path forward. She fled into the unforgiving desert. Alone in that vast, desolate emptiness, her future stretched before her, seemingly devoid of hope. But at her absolute darkest moment, it was not oblivion that found her, but a miraculous, divine encounter. An angel of the Lord appeared by a shimmering spring in the vast wilderness and spoke directly to her. First, the divine messenger issued a command, followed by an extraordinary blessing. "Go back to your mistress and submit to her. I will increase your descendants so much that they will be too numerous to count." Hagar, now filled with a renewed sense of purpose, knew exactly what to name her unborn child. "He will be called Ishmael," she declared, a name meaning God hears, because the Lord has heard your suffering. It is here that the book of Genesis introduces a powerful prophecy, one that astonishingly illuminates our modern era. It describes Ishmael's character in a way that would forever indelibly mark his descendants. "He will be a wild donkey of a man. His hand will be against everyone and everyone's hand against him, and he will live in hostility toward all his brothers." Let that profound statement truly sink in for a moment. This ancient phrase, penned thousands of years ago, describes, word for word, the very headlines we read today. While it might sound confrontational, it is crucial to remember that Ishmael, despite this challenging prophecy, was undeniably blessed by God. What, then, does it truly mean to be a wild donkey of a man? This was not an insult in the ancient world. On the contrary, the wild donkey was the quintessential symbol of untamable freedom, a fiercely independent spirit that submitted to no one, roaming freely and unburdened. This prophecy painted a vivid picture of a people destined to survive against all odds, a people marked by an indomitable will, but also, tragically, fated to live in an almost constant state of conflict. True to the angel's words, Hagar returned and, in due course, gave birth to her son, whom Abraham lovingly named Ishmael. This remarkable child would go on to become the patriarch of the Arab peoples, from whom the great religion of Islam would later emerge. At last, after so many agonizing years of waiting, Abraham held in his arms the tangible proof that God's extraordinary promise was, indeed, real. Imagine the profound relief and boundless joy that must have flooded the patriarch's heart. For 13 long years, Ishmael remained his only son, his beloved firstborn, the undisputed center of his world, and the cherished heir to all his grand plans and dreams. In this cherished child, Abraham envisioned the future of a mighty nation. The prophecy described Ishmael as a wild donkey, a spirit fiercely independent and remarkably difficult to tame. Today, countless observers see this very trait reflected in the profound pride and unyielding resilience that characterize many Arab nations. Yet the prophecy, like a double-edged sword, had a second stark warning. It declared that his hand would be against everyone and everyone's hand against him. Tragically, this chilling prediction of endless conflict resonates on two painfully evident fronts in our modern world. The prophecy was not confined merely to external enemies. The rich, complex history of the Islamic world has indeed been tragically marked by deep and often violent internal divisions, most notably between the Sunni and Shia branches. Modern conflicts, such as the devastating wars in Syria or Yemen, stand as agonizing examples of this struggle between brothers, eerily echoing the ancient warning that Ishmael's hostility would be directed against everyone, even his own kin. But the prophecy clarifies, with even more chilling precision, the roots of the conflict with Israel, a conflict brought to a head with the miraculous birth of Isaac. Years had passed since Ishmael's birth. Sarah, now a venerable 90 years old, had long since relinquished all hope in God's initial promise. She had, with a heavy heart, resigned herself to the idea that her legacy would continue solely through Ishmael. She felt, with a profound bitterness, that God had abandoned her entirely. But then, suddenly, one extraordinary day, 3 mysterious visitors appeared at Abraham's tent. As the 99-year-old Abraham extended his characteristic lavish hospitality, one of the enigmatic strangers delivered truly incredible news. "I will surely return to you, and Sarah, your wife, will have a son." Sarah, overhearing this astonishing conversation from inside the tent, instinctively laughed. It was not a laugh of joy, but of bitter, almost cynical disbelief. She no longer possessed the courage to even entertain such a wild, impossible hope. Abraham's reaction, too, was surprisingly complex. When God unequivocally confirmed that the divine covenant, his sacred promise, would indeed come through this new miraculous son, Abraham's very first thought wasn't celebration, but an agonizing plea for Ishmael. Instead of rejoicing, he anxiously implored God, "If only Ishmael might live under your blessing." This was the heartfelt cry of a heartbroken father, one who deeply loved his firstborn son and, with a heavy heart, clearly foresaw the painful conflict that lay ahead. Despite the human doubts and the gnawing fears, God remained utterly true to his word. Sarah, against all natural odds, gave birth to a son, and Abraham, in remembrance of his parents' initial disbelief, named him Isaac, which in Hebrew profoundly means, "he will laugh." For a precious, fleeting time, an immense joy permeated the camp, yet beneath the surface, a deep, simmering tension inexorably grew. The latent conflict finally erupted during Isaac's festive weaning celebration, a joyful milestone that quickly turned sour. It was then that Sarah observed Ishmael, her elder son, apparently mocking his little brother. Here, a crucial linguistic detail emerges. The Hebrew word used to describe Ishmael's mocking shares the very same root as Isaac's name itself. Ishmael wasn't merely playing. He was, in essence, profoundly challenging Isaac's rightful place as heir, implicitly proclaiming, "I am the firstborn, I am the true heir." For Sarah, this was the absolute last straw. Her reaction was immediate and decisive as she demanded of Abraham, with an unshakable conviction, "Get rid of that slave woman and her son, for that woman's son will never share in the inheritance with my son Isaac." The Bible poignantly recounts that this deeply troubled Abraham because of his love for his son. His heart, quite simply, was broken. Yet God instructed him to listen to Sarah's demand, offering a solemn but vital promise in return, that he would also make Ishmael into a great nation. Though it pained him beyond measure, Abraham, with a heavy heart, obeyed. The very next morning he gave bread and water to Hagar and Ishmael, and with profound sorrow sent them into the vast, unforgiving desert. That tearful farewell marked not just a physical separation, but a stark, undeniable moment that confirmed the beginning of a deep spiritual divide. A father, in his agony, had been forced to choose between his own children. Abraham's anguish in casting out his beloved son Ishmael profoundly reflects the historical wounds and lingering pain that both peoples, the Israelis and the Palestinians, continue to carry to this very day. For countless Muslim countries and for the Palestinian people, the very creation of the State of Israel in 1948 and the subsequent displacement of their communities was not a triumph but a profound catastrophe, an event they refer to as the Nakba. This modern catastrophe is seen as a chilling contemporary echo of Hagar and Ishmael's ancient expulsion into the desolate wilderness. Consider the immense weight of this. God himself had promised Abraham to bless Ishmael, a testament to the patriarch's unwavering devotion to his firstborn. Then, suddenly, a new baby is born, and overnight, Ishmael's entire future, his very destiny, seemed to vanish into thin air. Isaac's birth, from Ishmael's perspective, did not mean sharing an inheritance. It meant losing absolutely everything. This was not about simple jealousy. For Ishmael, Isaac's very existence represented the profound erasure of his own identity, his own rightful place. We see a stark, unsettling parallel today. For many in surrounding Muslim countries, Israel's very existence is interpreted as an attempt to erase their own Muslim identity, their own rightful claim to the land and its history. Sarah's ancient demand, "That son cannot inherit alongside mine," echoes with a chilling precision in today's most radical speeches. For instance, when Iranian leaders vehemently call for Israel's destruction, they often cite a text embedded in Iran's statutes, a saying attributed to the Prophet Muhammad that explicitly calls for violence against Jews. This saying, known as a hadith, chillingly claims that the final hour will not come unless the Muslims will fight against the Jews, and the Muslims would kill them until the Jews would hide themselves behind a stone or a tree. And a stone or a tree would say, "Muslim, there is a Jew behind me. Come and kill him." But this hadith, chillingly referenced in the charter of the Palestinian political authority known as Hamas, continues in an even more revealing and indeed ominous way. The text adds that all rocks and trees will betray the Jews, with the sole exception of the boxthorn tree. Tradition, it is claimed, associates the boxthorn with the Jewish people. Just a few years ago, a prominent imam in Palestine cited this very same hadith during a public event. He claimed, with grave conviction, that Jews are fully aware of this prophecy and for this precise reason, they are deliberately planting thousands of boxthorn trees within their settlements, so they might have places to hide when the prophesied time ultimately arrives. Despite the painful ancient separation between Isaac, who represents Israel, and Ishmael, who embodies the Arab peoples, it is crucial to understand that God had a divine plan for both. Yet these plans were distinctly different. To truly grasp why Ishmael's blessing differs fundamentally from Isaac's, one must first comprehend the single most important aspect of this entire narrative, the covenant with God. And most critically, only Isaac received this sacred covenant. A covenant is far more profound than simply a promise. It is an unbreakable, binding commitment, a sacred and utterly unique relationship forged between God and a chosen people. Through this divine covenant, God promised Abraham an unparalleled, exclusive relationship, and through Abraham, blessings that would cascade and flow to all his descendants. But why Isaac and not Ishmael, the firstborn? The answer lies in a divine choice that, from a human perspective, defies complete understanding. And God is remarkably explicit about this. Yes, but your wife Sarah will bear you a son, and you will call him Isaac. I will establish my covenant with him as an everlasting covenant for his descendants after him. Later, he reaffirms it with undeniable clarity, because it is through Isaac that your offspring will be reckoned. This profound decision establishes a central, foundational idea throughout the entire Bible. Divine election, God's chosen path, is not based on human merit or the order of birth. Ishmael was born from Sarah and Abraham's human plan and effort, a desperate attempt to create an heir. Isaac, however, was born from a pure miracle, from God's direct, supernatural intervention in two elderly, physically barren bodies. The spiritual covenant, therefore, is irrevocably tied to the miracle, not to any humanly conceived plan. Ishmael receives a blessing of worldly greatness, a promise of countless descendants and a vast lineage. Isaac, however, receives the covenant, the profound privilege of being intimately part of God's sacred, unfolding history. The concept of being the covenant people and the chosen people has been the very core of Jewish identity throughout millennia. It has been a boundless source of pride, the wellspring of their enduring survival against unimaginable odds, and, simultaneously, a perpetual cause of conflict with a world that often vehemently rejects or resents this deeply held idea. But God makes it unequivocally clear that even though Ishmael isn't the son of the covenant, he is by no means beyond his benevolent care. Before the painful expulsion, when Abraham desperately pleads for his firstborn son, God responds directly with a specific, powerful promise of greatness for Ishmael. As for Ishmael, I have heard you. Behold, I will bless him and make him fruitful and multiply him exceedingly. This astonishing promise is dramatically, breathtakingly fulfilled in the desert, shortly after Hagar and young Ishmael are cast out from Abraham's camp. When Hagar and the young boy are on the verge of dying from agonizing thirst, an angel of God miraculously intervenes. Not only does he show them a hidden well of water to save their very lives, but he dramatically repeats the blessing. Do not be afraid, for God has heard the voice of the boy. I will make him into a great nation. Ishmael's blessing, then, is undeniably one of earthly greatness. While Isaac is promised a profound spiritual covenant, Ishmael is promised power, countless descendants, and vast territory. He becomes the father to 12 princes, strikingly paralleling Jacob's 12 sons who would form the 12 tribes of Israel. Many see the undeniable fulfillment of this promise in the meteoric rise and vast expansion of the Arab peoples throughout history. Arabs, over the centuries, have indeed developed magnificent empires, fostered a rich and vibrant culture, and wielded enormous global influence. But surprisingly, the Quran and the Torah present differing versions of Abraham's life. The struggle between Abraham's sons, it turns out, continued even after their physical separation, finding new battlegrounds within the sacred texts themselves. The fight for the inheritance morphed into a profound battle over who truly told God's authentic story. Islam firmly asserts that previous sacred texts, such as the Jewish Torah, were corrupted or altered by human hands over time. This is precisely why the Quran presents itself as God's final, complete, and utterly correct message to humanity. In the Bible, Abraham's greatest and most agonizing test of faith arrives when God commands him to sacrifice his beloved son, Isaac. It is a pivotal, heart-wrenching moment that profoundly seals the covenant between God and Abraham. But in Islam, this foundational story changes completely. Islamic tradition asserts that the son Abraham was prepared to sacrifice was not Isaac, but rather Ishmael. What is the reason for this profound change? And why is it so incredibly important? Because within this narrative, being the son of the sacrifice elevates you to the status of the most significant spiritual heir. By placing Ishmael in this pivotal sacrificial role, Islam firmly establishes him as the central protagonist of the greatest act of faith. This dramatic shift redirects the spiritual inheritance through Ishmael's lineage, from which the Prophet Muhammad himself is believed to descend. This is not a small, inconsequential alteration. It is, in essence, a foundational claim that the true covenant and its inheritance rightfully belong to them. A curious detail highlights this divergence. The Quran itself does not explicitly name the son of the sacrifice, but Islamic scholars, through extensive tradition, have definitively identified him as Ishmael. This creates a monumental difference. Judaism and Christianity continue the narrative lineage through Isaac, viewing him as the covenant heir. In stark contrast, Islam views itself as a direct correction and completion of that narrative, and importantly, considers Abraham and Ishmael as the revered founders of its most sacred place, Mecca. This enduring battle to determine which story is the true one has had profound, very real, and often violently devastating consequences throughout history. The intense fight over sacred sites in Jerusalem stands as the perfect, most poignant example. The very holiest place for Jews, the Temple Mount, is the exact same hallowed location where two of Islam's most important mosques, the Dome of the Rock and Al-Aqsa, stand today. It is like witnessing one profound history physically built directly on top of another. Controlling this immensely significant site becomes, for both sides, a powerful, undeniable symbol of which religion is ultimately right, which narrative holds the ultimate truth. A truly fascinating detail, one that makes this situation even more intensely charged, is what lies directly beneath the resplendent Dome of the Rock, Jerusalem's iconic Golden Mosque. There sits a colossal, ancient stone known as the Foundation Stone. In Jewish tradition, this is not just any rock. It is believed to be the spiritual center of the entire world, the precise spot where Adam was created, where Abraham prepared to offer Isaac as a sacrifice, and where the holiest part of Solomon's magnificent temple once stood. In Islamic tradition, this very same sacred rock is revered as the spot from which the Prophet Muhammad ascended to heaven during his miraculous night journey. Two profoundly different, yet equally powerful narratives converge on a single, immovable stone, each claiming its ultimate truth. Prophet Muhammad ascended to heaven during his miraculous night journey. It's the same physical place, the very same ancient rock, yet it's imbued with two completely contradictory, deeply cherished stories. It's not simply one history built on top of another. It is two sacred texts, two profound narratives, colliding at a single, immovable point. Another fascinating, yet equally contested detail is the famous Western Wall in Jerusalem. Many mistakenly believe it to be a surviving wall from the ancient Jewish temple itself. In truth, it is the last remaining retaining wall of the vast Temple Mount complex. For Jews, it stands as the closest sacred spot they can approach to pray at their holiest ancient site, a potent symbol of both profound mourning and enduring hope. For Muslims, this very same wall is known as the Buraq Wall, the hallowed spot where Muhammad tethered his magnificent winged steed, Buraq, before his celestial ascent to heaven. This, then, is precisely why control of Jerusalem is so fiercely, desperately contested. They are not merely fighting over territory, over physical land. They are battling for control of history itself. It is one more agonizing chapter in the long, painful struggle to determine which story, Isaac's or Ishmael's, has the final, undisputed right to claim the most sacred place on earth. But the prophetic interpretation of this enduring conflict's eventual end is not one of bitter resignation. On the contrary, though it may seem utterly impossible given the centuries of bloodshed, the Bible reveals that reconciliation exists. After all the history of profound conflict and devastating separation, the Bible portrays a surprising, profoundly hopeful scene. When Abraham finally dies, the text says something crucial. And his sons Isaac and Ishmael buried him. After decades apart, after years of silence and estrangement, Isaac and Ishmael reunite, standing side by side to bury their beloved father. In that singular, solemn moment, they are simply two sons, united in their shared mourning. A key detail, according to deeply held Jewish tradition, is the specific order of the names, Isaac and Ishmael. The fact that Ishmael, the elder brother, allowed Isaac, the younger heir, to be named first in the text is viewed as a monumental gesture of acceptance and profound reconciliation. This act is not seen as mere historical record, but as a prophetic sign for their children, a powerful testament that peace is indeed possible. Jewish tradition interprets this as a profound indication that, in the future, Ishmael's descendants may, at long last, reconcile with those of Isaac. The act of burial itself demonstrates, beyond any doubt, that despite everything, God had not abandoned Ishmael, and both remained, irrefutably, Abraham's sons. This enduring hope is rooted in the truth that God blessed both brothers. Though the spiritual covenant was undeniably with Isaac, the solemn promise to make Ishmael a great nation was never, ever withdrawn. In our current times, although we remain agonizingly far from a complete resolution of this ancient conflict, some truly remarkable events have occurred, interpreted by many as the tentative beginnings of a mutual understanding between Jews and Muslims. Amidst a relentless stream of news regarding wars and escalating tensions, particularly with Iran, something that once seemed utterly unthinkable has transpired. A direct modern echo of that ancient burial where Isaac and Ishmael stood united. In recent years, several Arab nations, including the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain, made a courageous, transformative decision to do something radically different. They signed historic peace agreements and normalized diplomatic relations with Israel. The most curious and profoundly revealing aspect is the name they deliberately chose for these groundbreaking treaties: the Abraham Accords. For the first time in decades, modern diplomacy did not solely focus on intractable conflict, but consciously and explicitly invoked the common father revered by both Jews and Muslims. It was a public, undeniable acknowledgement that despite deep theological and political differences, their fundamental origin is, in fact, the same. Another little-known, yet incredibly poignant detail, example of reconciliation, is found in the deepest and most mystical branches of both faiths: Jewish Kabbalists and Muslim Sufis. These spiritual seekers often discovered profound understanding and an almost identical spiritual language between them. Their ultimate goal wasn't to prove that their own religion was the correct one, but rather that they shared the same profound aim: dissolving the ego to unite with the divine. Possessing this shared spiritual purpose, they spoke a very similar, resonant language of the soul. Both systems describe the soul's journey in strikingly parallel ways. Both Kabbalah and Sufism perceive life as an arduous journey of the soul, ascending through different spiritual levels or worlds to draw ever closer to God. Both traditions describe God as an infinite, incomprehensible light, and human beings as a mere spark of that divine illumination, constantly yearning to return to its original source. And crucially, the language of love stands absolutely central to both traditions. They speak of a burning, all-consuming love for God that transcends all other feelings, a love that relentlessly seeks total union with the divine. The common principle here is crystal clear. When the spiritual search becomes deeply personal and profoundly mystical, labels like Jewish or Muslim begin to lose their rigid importance when compared to the transformative, unifying experience of the sacred itself. In a remarkable way, these mystics accomplished what politicians often cannot. They met at Abraham's spiritual tomb, acknowledging that both were seeking the same, singular God of their common ancestor. If they share so much in common, how could they have had so many devastating conflicts throughout history? Because, as we said before, the profound echo of the Father's actions reverberates, often tragically, in the actions of their children. We have witnessed two distinct paths in this powerful story, that of seemingly endless conflict and that of difficult, often elusive, human reconciliation. But the Bible presents a third distinct way, a solution that does not depend on the machinations of politics or the efforts of mere men, but rather on direct divine intervention, the coming of Jesus. The Christian faith presents Jesus not merely as a simple prophet, but as the definitive ultimate solution to the pervasive problem of human division. How, then, does Jesus solve this ancient, intractable conflict? The central revolutionary idea is that Jesus does not take sides in the historical fight between Isaac and Ishmael. Instead, he creates an entirely new family, a spiritual family, where those old earthly identities are no longer the primary source of division or hostility. The Apostle Paul famously writes that Christ is our peace, who has made both one and has broken down in his flesh the dividing wall of hostility. This wall of separation represents all historical and religious hostility that divides people. According to Christian belief, when a person is united with Christ, they receive a new identity, one that transcends their earthly, ethnic identity. They are no longer primarily Jewish or Arab, no longer solely descendants of Isaac or Ishmael, but rather, they become part of a new unified spiritual family. When, then, does this profound reconciliation truly occur? This is a crucial question. According to this view, reconciliation unfolds in two distinct stages. The first stage happens in our current times. Peace and unity begin now, in the hearts of individuals who willingly accept this path of faith. It vividly manifests in communities of believers from both Arab and Jewish backgrounds who, despite the intense political conflict raging around them, already live as brothers and sisters in faith, powerfully demonstrating that overcoming division is, indeed, possible. However, the complete and final solution to the conflict on a global grand scale is seen as a future event. The Bible teaches that this will be fully accomplished with the glorious return of Jesus, an event known as the Second Coming. At that momentous time, he will establish a definitive, lasting, and universal peace on earth. How, then, will Jesus accomplish this seemingly impossible task? The Bible explains that this profound peace is achieved by creating a new humanity. The Apostle Paul, in a powerful passage that directly reflects the idea of tearing down walls of hostility, explains that Christ came to abolish the enmity, to create in himself one new humanity out of the two, thus making peace. This enduring hope beautifully connects with ancient messianic prophecies that appear throughout the Old Testament, speaking of a future time when the wolf will dwell with the lamb, and they will not harm or destroy on all my holy mountain. But this is not the only prophecy that speaks of Christ as the one who ultimately resolves the deep-seated conflict between Jews and Muslims. The prophecy of the Prince of Peace, also from the prophet Isaiah, is absolutely key to understanding the profound solution that Christianity proposes. This majestic title means that Jesus' primary mission was not to be an earthly king who would conquer through wars, but rather to bring a profound inner and spiritual peace that transforms hearts and societies. For unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given, and the government shall rest upon his shoulders, and he shall be called by these names: Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, Prince of Peace. His government and peace will extend without end. 2. Truly break the endless cycle of hatred that began with Ishmael and Isaac, Jesus introduces a principle that is nothing short of a true spiritual revolution, an idea that goes against all conventional Jewish and Muslim logic. Love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. Which path will Abraham's children ultimately choose? The desolate desert of perpetual hostility, or the unifying solace found at their father's tomb? Share your own insights in the comments below. If these profound passages have captivated your interest, then prepare yourself, because what you've just encountered is only the beginning. Islam also narrates the life of Jesus, but in ways that are remarkably different from Christianity, and these differences are truly shocking. Click on the video now displayed on your screen to discover the astonishing differences between Jesus as portrayed in Islam and Jesus as revealed in Christianity. Understanding these distinctions is absolutely key to comprehending the fundamental worldview of Muslims compared to Christians. Click on screen. You cannot afford to miss this.